Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 121, titled Vladimir Tarasenko or Else. Streaming live on Facebook Live, Twitter Live, YouTube Live, and Twitch on the Primetime Radio Network. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief Nick Villano. Nick, lot of analysis amongst the media members this week. Lots of blogs on pucksandpitchforks.com about Vladimir Tarasenko. You wrote a couple pieces. David Holliday, I believe, wrote a piece. We're going to ask the fans, do you want Vladimir Tarasenko as a New Jersey Devil? Let's get to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big story today. Obviously, you know, we talked last Wednesday about Dougie Hamilton signing. His jersey number came out today. Found it interesting. They didn't give him 19. Maybe there's future plans for that with the Travis Zajac situation. Who knows? But that's neither here nor there right now. So it's interesting to see the numbers. We've been waiting for the numbers for a couple days. But when it comes right down to it, the number one story surrounding the Devils is a winger. They need a top 6 winger. And I wrote a story before the podcast that's going to come out tomorrow morning about 5 wingers that the Devils could go after that aren't Vladimir Tarasenko. I also wrote, today I wrote 3 trades I'd be willing to do for Vladimir Tarasenko. Because here's the thing. I definitely muted that. Here's the thing. I don't want to spend a lot. And I think that's the consensus out there is that we can't compare it to like the Will Butcher trade or the Marc-Andre Fleury trade where somebody like sent something or sent nothing to get, like, that's not happening. The Blues don't want to do that. There's 2 years left on Tarasenko's contract. They're not in a cap crunch right now. They would definitely rather get him off the roster, but they'd rather sit him in the owner's box and take nothing for him. Mm-hmm. But I also think they're asking for like a first-round pick, and they're not getting that. I think they're asking for a top prospect, and they're not getting that. So I wrote an article where the article that came out today had Tyce Thompson as the best prospect to go there, and another trade had Jesper Boquist. They're not getting both of them in one trade, but it was basically like Tyce Thompson. One of them was Tyce Thompson, Nikita Hoytuk, and it was Matthew Hellickson, but it's come out since then that Matthew Hellickson's not signing with us. So, yeah, I mean, he's a moot point. He was a throw-in anyway. He's just like an added thing just to get this done. I think that the Devils, and that's still a lot if you ask me. That's a lot to give up. Well,
yeah, I was about to say the names that you just, put out there. If we're up to me, I don't think St. Louis really has the leverage right now to even ask for that. Even with the rumors of the Rangers and Islanders in the mix, I don't think they even have the capital to match the Devils, but I don't think the Devils would even need to overpay to get Tarasenko. And worst case scenario, and I've read Pucks and Pitchforks. I think it was David Holliday that said, "Hey, worst case scenario, just drive up the price to a ridiculous price." And I don't think Lou Lamoriello or Chris Drury would. I don't think they just don't have that much to give like the Devils, and of course the most important, the cap space that the Devils have. They've got the space for this, but just because you got the space for it doesn't mean you make the wrong deal. I mean, you had to overpay for Dougie Hamilton, but you didn't have to give up assets. You just gave up cap space and money. But in this case, and I saw Lyle Richardson, Bleacher Report, put in either Sharon Govich or Kokinen.
Yeah, get the hell out of here.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not.
You're not getting an NHL ready young player who was on our first line last year. So get Kokinen's. If you're sending something back, maybe you get Kokinen. But I wouldn't do Kokinen for Tarasenko straight up. Sharon Govich is laughable. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah,
you are not
even close.
Like, come on.
I would say, if anything, I would say Tyce Thompson and Boquist. But even then, I think that's asking for too much in terms of prospects. So
listen,
it could be.
I'm deathly afraid of that shoulder. Deathly afraid because he said it himself that he didn't like the job that Blues doctors did. He didn't like it. The Devils, I think, have done a good job with injuries in the past. Like we saw Taylor Hall and his injuries. And just a reminder that we're actually going to have Corey Masisak on at 8:45. So he's coming up in about 7 or 8 minutes.
Is that a message to me?
That was absolutely a message to you.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And then I sent you a message.
Yeah, I had him at 8:40. Thank you.
Yeah. So just a reminder that we're going to get his thoughts on the situation and what he thinks. But I thought, I honestly, I looked at the Devils roster. Before I looked at the Devils roster, I thought we were in a better shape at forward. We're not really that good a shape. We're pretty much forced at this point to throw out the same top two lines as last year, which is fine. But then you got to take into account that we lost Bastian, we lost Maltsev, we lost. There's one name I'm missing.
Well, aside from Zajac and Palmieri,
Yeah,
I mean,
but I'm just talking about the end of the year.
Yeah,
when we were talking about the youth line and the Nico, Brett, and Zaka line, that bottom six still had a lot of spunk, because you had the Bastian, McLeod, Wood line that was really good, and then you had a bunch of parts of players who were just young and full of energy, like Maltsev and the names are escaping me. Oh, Thompson was in there a couple times, but he didn't look great. But now you're looking at a spot where you probably have to play Marian Studenic, who got a little bit of a look last year. You might be forced to put Holtz in there, which you don't want to do. You don't want to rush Holtz because you couldn't get a winger. And you don't want to rush Mercer because you couldn't get a winger, especially Mercer, because you might have to play him because he's a center and he's a good center. I think they're going to try to play Belquist at center. I really hope they put him on a plan to get him better. Remember, we were giving up on McLeod last year. Now he's considered an integral part of this team. I think Belquist has the ability to bounce back like that. He was dominant at times in the AHL. We talked to We've talked to AHL people before who told us that when he jumps on the ice, he's a difference maker. And, I believe them. And I've watched a couple games where he does look like a man amongst boys every so often. He has this extra gear. It's just how do you unlock that gear? How do you make that more of a consistent gear? So I think that he's going to and everybody's telling us we lost Murray, Denny Brutinel. I was trying to think of the other forward we lost, but
No,
yeah,
we're talking about offense, people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know we lost
like
Murray.
Goals.
Yeah.
Goals. We like goals.
Yeah.
I don't know how this team's going to score 250 goals or whatever. Maybe I'm off because of this season's, but
last year was just a small sample what this offense can be. Again, let's go back to what happened. I mean, they were rolling. They were starting to build that momentum after that Buffalo win, and then COVID hit the team. And I think they were one of the first teams to actually have like a team outbreak in the league, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And, and Mackenzie Blackwood had been sidelined just prior to the whole team outbreak. So by the time they came back, and of course there was just a really it was just they looked like they were just fatigued and slow for their not exciting, but towards the end of the season you started to see a little bit of that pep, and you saw a little bit of the speed and skill. So right now with Tarasenko, getting back to the subject at hand, my feeling, I think Marty Brodeur is going to be an integral part in this deal. What he's telling Tom Fitzgerald, his relationship with Doug Armstrong in St. Louis, I think, if the Devils can get away with maybe some money, a decent prospect, and maybe a late rounder, I'd do the deal. But to ask for Sharon Govich or Kokinen and add in, Boquist and Tyson, no. St. Louis doesn't have the leverage right now because you've got a disgruntled, high-priced, let's say, injury-prone player. Too risky.
And I'm curious what's going on with Tomas Tatar, because he's a player with good underlying statistics. It worries me that his inconsistency worries me a little bit to make the long-term commitment to him. I was a little happier to make that commitment to Brandon Saad, but he chose St. Louis over New Jersey. He pulled a Patrick Maroon. He chose the Blues over the Devils. It is what it is. But when I look at this team and I look at the impact, they just need a wing scorer. And I was looking around the league, and there's a couple out there. But the issue with the players that are out there, and I wrote this in the article today, is that a lot of them are either A, on the last year of their deal. Looks like Connor Carrick just signed with the Seattle Kraken.
Wow.
So, I mean, there wasn't room for him, so it makes sense. I'm glad for him. I'm glad he's getting another NHL shot. He's a good dude, and I hope the best for him. But while you get Corey, I'll kind of get into this, is that the players that are going to be available, because Timo Meier's off the list, and it looks like Johnny Gaudreau is off the list, which is unfortunate because those two just make perfect sense, and I'd be willing to spend more. I'd be willing to spend market value on those two players, but all the other players are either players in the last year of their contract or players who are coming off. Their best season was 2 or 3 years ago, or they're coming off an injury. Those are the three situations, and that includes Tarasenko. Tarasenko's best seasons were 3 years ago. And, I have a guy like Tyler Bertuzzi's a guy I really like. I think he's a really good target for this Devils team. And I think he's somebody they should absolutely go after. But he was hurt last year. He had a back injury, and he tried to rehab, and it didn't work. And he had to get surgery. So I think that the Devils really need to see what's out there and what's available. I'd love Philip Forsberg would be another one that would be good, but they're asking for the moon. And Nashville's already made a couple trades where they gave up Ryan Ellis and Victor Arvidsson. So they've already cleaned house a little bit, but they don't really need to anymore. But I think he's either in the last year or I think he's in the last year of his contract. He becomes a free agent next year. There's going to be some good free agents next year, by the way. Some good forward free agents, but that's neither here nor there. I think that the Devils, they needed Saad would have been the perfect, not perfect, but he would have been really good for this situation right now. But they didn't get him, so what are you going to do? There's 32 teams now that 31 that the Devils have to compete with. A lot of them had cap space. But I do think that, and I said this, I've said so many negative things about the Tarasenko trade. And I just want to convey that I think he's worth the risk when you don't consider the return that St. Louis is asking for. Sam's back.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, I've read your articles on Pucks and Pitchforks. .com. I'm also an avid reader of The Athletic and what Corey Masisak has to say. By the way, we have Corey on the phone lines right now. Please welcome to the State of the Fan address, Corey Masisak. He is the Devils beat writer for The Athletic. You can find him on Twitter at CMasisak22. Corey, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. That was a pretty smooth transition there.
Yeah, it doesn't happen
That's
too
what
often.
We call that the professional transition on the State of the Fan address. Corey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing great. You've been a busy man. The Devils are the team of the hour. I just want to know, does this feel new? Does this feel different? I listen to the Athletic Hockey Show. Devils don't get a ton of coverage, but you got to do podcasts. You've always been a writer. You've always done really great stories, but it seems like the national arm of the Athletic finally got to spread your wings on that.
Yeah, the first day when they signed Dougie Hamilton, that was a little different just because the way, sort of the way we cover things has changed. I would have said that this, in some ways this feels relatively similar to 2 summers ago when, they drafted Jack and traded for PK and signed Wayne Simmons and all that. But back then, we didn't do breaking news podcasts back then, or we didn't have a breaking news department where whenever something big happens, there basically is the bat signal goes out to all the relevant people in our company, and we write a quick story and then add stuff onto it later. And so it was definitely, there hasn't been a whole lot of that Devils related since we started doing it. I think the last one was probably, I guess there was a little bit of it whenever, Ray Shero got fired and John Hines got fired, but that was kind of a different kind of deal. So
definitely a different mood.
Yeah, for sure.
So you wrote about it before it happened. There will be a lot of try. I love that headline. I don't know if you do the headlines, but I do love that headline. There will be a lot of try. Was the headline you wrote before free agency, and then it happened. They signed Dougie Hamilton. It took longer than Nick Kyprios came out probably 11:30-ish, saying that the Devil, or maybe it was a little after 12, somewhere in that range, saying the Devils were going to sign him, and then it didn't get confirmed until about 6 o'clock. So it was a stressful 6 hours, but the Devils got it done. They got Dougie Hamilton. They got the big right D on the market. They paid less than Seth Jones got. They paid less than Werenski got in Columbus. Apparently they're paying him as much as Darnell Nurse is getting in Edmonton. So it seems like, if the stats are telling me what I think and the eye test tells me what I think I'm seeing, this is a great deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, just rattling off all the way that the market has suddenly, I don't know if the market has changed or if it's just a weird timing where there's suddenly a bunch of guys all coming up for contracts at the same time. It was, look, everybody has, I don't want to say everybody, there's lots of people around the Devils have been talking about Dougie Hamilton for a very long time. And, it just, the closer you got to I was going to call it July 1st, but it's not July 1st this year, obviously. Just the closer you got to that first day of free agency, there weren't a lot of other teams out there that were really being mentioned at all around him. I mean, there were a couple of other teams besides Carolina and New Jersey, and that day it was weird because, like you said, Nick Kypreos threw that out there. I think it was before 12 because I started texting people about Dougie at 12:01, and kind of by design. I didn't want to talk to anybody in the front office before 12, and so I was told at 12:02 that they hadn't even talked to his agent that day yet. They were going to talk to him very shortly, right? So whenever I heard that, I was like, okay, so look, again, there's we can have a whole discussion about how these things happen, and Hamilton was a little bit different because it wouldn't have been tampering if they had talked to him. They had talked to his agent before because the Hurricanes had given him permission to go out and talk to people. But as of I took that at 12:05 or whatever that the deal was not done. And the reason why it dragged out so long is that, as we kind of learned after the contract details came out, there was a lot of stuff to hammer out there. It was not just a standard, here's $9 million a year for 7 years contract. And so, the only thing that I really thought over the course of that day, I think maybe at 3 o'clock and again, maybe at 4 or whatever, I'd reached out to a couple people just because I knew there was another team that was maybe lurking in the weeds, and I was just checking with people hey, you haven't heard anything about Hamilton and this team, right? And so, at that point, basically everything I kept hearing back was, look, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So, then like I said, whenever the contract came out, you saw how this is one of those things where we've, I think I've written about it before. It's definitely been talked about before. How do teams, find an edge in these contracts when everybody technically has the same amount of money to spend, and teams like Toronto and Boston and whoever the quote unquote big market teams have been sort of flexing their muscles by giving out gigantic signing bonus numbers and giving out contracts that are buyout proof and giving out just different ways to sort of carrots to kind of finish the deal. And look, $9 million a year for 7 years for Dougie Hamilton is, I don't think it's going to be a bargain. I mean, he would have to win probably multiple Norris trophies for it to be a quote unquote bargain, but they're going to get what they paid for. I think it's about as, and I think between now and the start of camp, I'm going to try to do something on here are all the biggest defensive contracts that have been signed in the salary cap era. And I think most of them have worked out pretty well, depending on when, how old the person was whenever they signed them. And so I do think that the fact that Dougie is 28 and not say 31, like Alex Pietrangelo was last summer, I think that's a big deal. And I think that, I think he's going to Dom's system or projection thing says that he's going to age pretty well. And, given the way that his career has gone to this point, you would think he's going to age pretty well. And so I just think that, like I said, I think he's going to be their number one defenseman for a while. And then even, at the back half of the, I think that's the biggest thing with these big, long contracts is people immediately worry about years, 6, 7, 8, whatever. And, I just don't, I think he's still going to be pretty good at the end of this contract. And they've sort of set themselves up now to where, with Ty Smith and with Luke Hughes coming, that maybe they're not going to need him to be the number one defenseman for 7 years. So, there's other stuff you could talk about with him, but I just think that it was a sort of a fortuitous thing, that I think the flat cap really helped them. I mean, I think if given the fact that the salary cap was 81.5 last year and it's 81.5 this year and it's going to be 81.5 next year and maybe the year after that, I think if the cap had even gone up to 84 or 85, I think there probably would have been a half dozen more teams that would have been interested in him. And that, he probably would have either gotten more than 9 or he would have gone to a team that was closer to contending. But I think that it was just sort of the right time and the right spot for the franchise. They're ready to not necessarily push all the chips in, but push some in to get closer to the point where they can push them all in. And so he was just kind of the right guy. I think I had mentioned to someone on the radio a couple weeks ago, like just I didn't think they were going to go out and sign a bunch of $3 million guys to just try to paper over the cracks. I really thought that they were going to, they were going to hunt the big guy and, and obviously sign a goalie or whatever. But I didn't think. I think he sort of sets up everything else for them now. Now that they have him, they kind of know that if they add a couple more things and the young guys develop, that they get all the stuff that they've been talking about, they think is going to happen in a couple of years. I think it might actually happen now that they have this guy in place.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps. It's the number one thing. Even with Luke Hughes in there, it wasn't a guarantee that he's going to develop into a number one defenseman. And, the other guys you have as prospects, like you have all these forward prospects that, Holtz and Mercer, and then obviously Hughes and Heischer, and then Bratt, and all these young forwards that are like, yeah, these are top six guys probably, and they look like they look the part. Nolan Foote you can even put in there, but the defenseman was always like you need a Hoytuk and Michael Vukojevic and Shakir Mukhamadullin and like all these other ones where you're like, you don't see it. I don't see it. Maybe they could absolutely develop into that, and they can play out of their mind, but you don't project that for these players. But for when you put Dougie Hamilton on there, then that expectation changes. Then Kevin Ball could come in and be a second or third line defenseman, and everybody's happy about it. And Damon Severson, like the expectations on him are cut in half, which I think is absolutely great for him. So that kind of takes me to my next question of how do you look at this defense as a whole? Now that Dougie's at the top and it pushes everyone down, where do you add in Ryan Graves, the Ryan Graves trade, which I thought was a very shrewd move and a good move for the Devils overall. How do you look at this defense now compared to maybe the Metro Division and the other teams in the Eastern Conference?
Right. So I'll say this, like I feel like Tom Fitzgerald kind of said this was going to happen. Like maybe not, these exact players, right? But he, one of the things that he said after he took over for Ray Shero was that, like he's mentioned it a few times in different press conferences that he wants more size on the back end. Like that was something that was like, they just drafted a bunch of big guys in the 2021 draft, but he actually said, well, size wasn't necessarily a requirement or something that we told our scouts to look for, but it was something that they were looking for at the NHL level. Like they just decided that they needed to get bigger. And, I wouldn't say everyone, but like some people's first reaction to that is going to be, like, people have been linking them to Rasmus Ristolainen for 2 years and player Cody Ceci or somebody, it could have gone that way. Let's just put it that way. They could have traded for Rasmus Ristolainen. They could have gone after Seth Jones. I think just from sort of reading the tea leaves from what Tom Fitzgerald said the other day, I think they did go after Seth Jones or maybe another one of those big name defensemen like him. Because he sort of mentioned like they were trying and those teams went in a different direction, and then that sort of led them to Dougie Hamilton. But anyway, so you could, however it could have worked out. The fact that it did work out with Dougie Hamilton and Ryan Graves, and even going back to Jonas Siegenthaler, like they got three large defensemen that satisfies this, this quote unquote requirement that, hey, we need to get bigger on defense. But the thing is that they didn't get three big, slow, bad defensemen, which could have happened. I do think that like Ryan Graves is like a sneaky, like he's not, people should not expect what he was 2 years ago where like, whatever, he led the league in plus minus, that doesn't matter. But like, but he did have he did have a kind of a spike in goals and points. Playing with pretty much exclusively with Cale Makar. I don't think he's going to do that. Even if he does play against play with Dougie Hamilton the whole year, I don't think he's necessarily going to be that, but he is a good defensive defenseman. Like he is a guy that can skate and get the puck out of danger, and he does things that show up, in sort of the analytics numbers that are good. And Siegenthaler is like that a little bit too, even maybe more defensive than Graves. And then Dougie is kind of, I keep calling him, everyone calls him Dougie. I want to call him Hamilton because I feel weird just calling him Dougie over and over, but that's just sort of the way it's been with him his entire career. I do think that he is, like I don't think he's going to be exactly what some people think he's going to be. Like, he's not going to be Chris Pronger just because he's 6'6" and 230 pounds or whatever he is. I think he actually plays more like Damon Severson than maybe some people who just see the height and the weight and know that he's like been called this number one defenseman or a Norris Trophy candidate. But I also don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I think he's a bigger, slightly better skater, more skilled version of Damon. So I do think that, like, basically when you sort of slot them all in, like, either Ty Smith or Ryan Graves is going to play with Hamilton and the other one is going to play with Damon. And then, you're probably going to have, if this season started tomorrow, it would obviously be Siegenthaler and Subban on the third pairing. We'll see if we get to training camp and it's definitely still going to be those guys. Although I mean, they haven't really invested that much in Siegenthaler. Like, if Kevin Ball in particular just had like a lights out training camp, I think he would probably make the team. But I think those two guys are pretty similar players. So you're looking at kind of the same thing anyway. And it's a pretty good mix of, like, an offensive guy and a defensive guy, or, if they do play Ty and Damon together, those guys, they were great for part of the year last year anyway. And if they're not, dealing with, Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon and whoever else on a nightly basis, they might, they might be really, really good together. So I mean, it seems crazy. Like, 2 years ago, you could have said for sure, like, it was hard to come up with more than a handful of teams that were worse than the Devils 1-6 on defense. And if somebody wanted to say they had the worst, they were probably right. And to go from there to now, where, like, if Hamilton is really one of the, even conservatively saying, 10 best defensemen in the league. I mean, he finished fourth in the Norris voting, and, Dom's model says he's going to be the third best defenseman in the league next year. So let's say he's top 10, and, Graves is an upgrade over what they had, and Ty takes another, small, even just a small step forward, and Damon is basically what he was, or maybe looks even better than what he was, given his new role. That's pretty good. Like, it's not, they've certainly gone way up those rankings. Like, I don't know if it's, the eighth best defense scorer in the league or the 12th best or whatever it is, but it's certainly something. It'd be pretty hard to say that they're not going to be in the top 16 unless something weird happens.
Yeah, I think it's like what you're saying. Pushing everyone down also makes it, and then I think the more important thing is that you had to, and I call this the Ben Lovejoy syndrome, because once you put Ben Lovejoy in the third line and made him a penalty killer, he was stupendous for the Devils a couple of years ago. I can't remember the exact years he was here, but it hasn't been that long. I think that a similar situation could happen with Subban, where if you put him on the third line, you don't ask him to carry 21 to 23 minutes a night, and you don't even need him on the number one power play anymore. He can just kind of hit that slap shot on the number two power play. Maybe they put him with, probably Ty Smith makes more sense because the right-hand, left-handed thing on the second power play unit. So just real quick, how does this impact Subban? Do you think you're going to see a different side of him?
It's possible. I mean, it is sort of like, I kind of compare it almost to Andy Green the last couple of years that he was in New Jersey, where it felt like it was just a repetitive thing where everyone kept saying, well, if he only had to play 18 minutes and he could just focus on penalty killing, he didn't have to play against like top competition, he might be really good. Like, he might be like, like a lighter version of what he was when he was kind of at his peak. And the Devils were just never really in a situation to where they could get to the playing him as like their number 5 defenseman or whatever. It'll be interesting. Like, especially, I think I don't know, the power play is going to be, trying to figure out which. It seemed like it was kind of crowded before with Butcher and Subban and Severson and Smith, and now you replace Butcher with, Dougie Hamilton. He's going to play like a lot on the power play, obviously.
Yeah.
So one of those obviously one of those other three is definitely not going to play on the power play, and maybe even two, depending on what they have. How they have been doing the sort of one defenseman on PP1 and 2 on PP2. But if they get enough forward talent in order, they wouldn't need to do that. So I mean, maybe he doesn't play on the power play. They're probably going to need him on the penalty kill. I mean, I guess probably Graves and Siegenthaler and Hamilton, and then maybe Subban is the fourth guy there probably. But I mean, to me, the most interesting thing is going to be what do they do at even strength, because Hamilton and Sievers are going to play a lot at even strength, obviously. So that is not going to leave a ton of time for Subban. But like you said, though, if it's sort of like a matchup thing, and he's, I would think that if he's playing with Siegenthaler, they'll probably actually get some like defensive minutes. If he was playing with, say, Ty Smith, it would probably be more offensive. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a weird, like, he is going to be a free agent, and it would maybe be a better situation for him to be somewhere else where he could play more. But also at the same time, if he ends up playing well in a reduced role for the Devils, that also might actually help him out for his next. Because I mean, obviously his next contract is not going to be anywhere near the one that he's on now. But he's got to figure out what his sort of second act is going to be in the NHL, and that might actually be. This might be a way for him to sort of showcase, like a different version of him for his next contract.
I'm curious. Before you came on, basically the entire conversation was Vlad Tarasenko, and kind of what do you do there? How much do you spend if he does get there? What the situation is? And I looked at the forward groups, but for a couple articles this week, and it's if Jack and Nico don't take I don't want to say a monumental, I don't want to speak out of line, but if they don't take a pretty precipitous step forward, the forward group is, I'm not that excited about it. So it does seem like they need someone, but like, what's your take on the forward group? Do you think that a Tarasenko would work well here? Do you think he's worth the risk? Do you think there's other players that might be worth in trade, or possibly a Thomas Tatar would work out better here? What's your take on the forwards group here?
Well, I mean, it depends on what they're. I mean, I think it depends a little bit on how much they really feel like they need to push in for this year. Like, I mean, to me, I don't think Vladimir Tarasenko is going to get them to. Like, I don't think they're playing in the Stanley Cup final with Vladimir Tarasenko on their top line or whatever. I think that's still probably 3 to 4 years away, and he's got 2 years left on his contract. And I'm not sure. Maybe he would come here and maybe he'd click with Jack and they would want to sign him to a longer deal. But even then, I don't know if at that point of his career, if he would even still be, like a top line guy who you're expecting 30 goals from. I mean, I think the whole, if they looked at it on the first day of free agency or right around the draft and said, this guy could help us, but we think, there might be other guys out there who could also help us who are not this old and also don't have this many injury concerns. Let's wait and see if we can get something else. I think that was probably the right way to go. Now, if this drags out and we get into, even into September and Tarasenko still hasn't been traded and, there just doesn't look like there's a lot of other options out there. I get the idea of Tatar. I don't know if I feel like he's more of kind of a middle six guy. And again, maybe he would help this year for sure, but I don't know if he's going to help them in 3 or 4 years when they really need it. And, and if they sign him to a 3 or 4 year deal, then at that point, he's just eating up a spot that, Dawson Mercer or Alexander Holtz or somebody else like that is going to want to take up, or they're going to want to take. So I think that I guess the best way to put it is if they think Tarasenko is healthy enough to play with Hughes on the top line, and they think he could, if he stayed healthy, he could probably score 30 or 35 goals pretty easily next to Hughes. Then it's worth doing it. Obviously not like giving up something great for him. I think the fact that they can eat the whole thing, the whole salary, means that they probably shouldn't have to. I mean, if the other competition is the Islanders and the Rangers, the Blues are probably going to need to, eat some salary for both of those teams. Whereas I'm sure the Devils their selling point is, we'll take it all. I think that I basically look at it like whoever's out there, whether it's Tarasenko or another guy they're trying to trade for. I guess Tatar is like pretty much the only other free agent that's would even be in this realm. Like, it should be somebody that they think can play on the first line, or I can say it should be somebody who they can play with Jack, who's going to score a bunch of goals. And if it's just somebody who's like a good middle six forward who would raise the floor this year, but maybe not the ceiling in 3 or 4 years from now, then I don't necessarily think that's something that they absolutely have to do. I mean, the forwards are, it's weird, like, to just say, well, they're just going to run back the same top six from the end of last year, and then, they actually have a couple of holes they have to fill in the bottom six, and it's kind of hard to say exactly who that's going to be at this point. If anything, I feel like it's maybe even more likely that they're going to end up grabbing like a veteran who's like still stuck out on the vine in a couple of weeks to fill one of either to replace Nathan Bastian or to fill in on that other, whatever that other line is, the third line or the fourth line. But yeah, like I said, I just don't think, I think they've got all these kids coming that they think are going to be pretty good, but we don't know for sure if any of them are going to be can stick next to Jack Hughes and score, 30 to 40 goals a year good. I guess Alexander Holtz is maybe the most likely, but he's not going to do that next year. So, yeah, I just think that that's probably the way that might be the way that they're thinking about it. That's definitely the way I would be thinking about it. It's just, Tarasenko might be worth a very low risk to help kind of get from point A to point B. And then maybe they find somebody to replace him in 2 years when it's actually go time.
Corey, we got a question from John Stitzen on the YouTube Live channel. Does Corey think Ball or Siegenthaler will make it come opening day?
I mean, I think at this point, it probably, I don't know, I'd say maybe 70-30 or 75-25 for Siegenthaler. I mean, the one thing, everybody's been doing kind of projected lineups and things like that. I haven't done a story that's just been specifically a projected lineup, but I'm sure that's coming. I feel like all of these guys, whether it's Ball or Riley Walsh, any of the rookie defensemen from Bingo from last year, and Nolan Foote and Graham Clark, if the season started tomorrow, one or two of those guys might make the team because they kind of have to. But I don't those guys. I mean, they didn't have a normal year. They didn't they had a rookie year in the American Hockey League, but they didn't play a full year. They've Nolan Foote has only played whatever it was 38 or 39 games in the last 18 months because of the injury that he had. And Graham Clark was the same way. He had a big injury too. So I do think that Ball. I know, Mark Dennehy had said at the end of the year that he made more progress from the start of the season until the end than anybody on the team. And then obviously they gave him a few games at the end of the year as kind of a reward for that. But I still feel like if they had their way and they didn't have to use him, I'm guessing they would still like him to play another, let's say 20 to 40 games in the American Hockey League before they were ready to really commit to, giving him a full-time run in the NHL.
And then last question, Corey, because you're a busy man right now, and I appreciate you giving us time, but you wrote that big piece. You wrote on top of all this, you went to the World Junior Summer Showcase this week to go watch Luke Hughes play for Team USA, and from all intents and purposes, he looked pretty good. He played on the top line I was kind of trying to figure out the format, but it looked like he played on the top line on one of the split squads for Team USA. But just kind of go over that and all the interest that the article has brought in and kind of what you saw from the Devils' 4th overall pick.
Yeah, so the way that tournament usually goes, well, usually Canada's involved too, but because of the pandemic they weren't there. But the US always has 2 teams, and it's first and foremost they kind of beat you over the head with this. It's an evaluation camp. They're the guys who are the coaches for USA or the guys who are going to run the team for the World Juniors. So this is some of those guys, like Nate Lehman is a college coach, so he knows, he's seen all he needs to see of a guy like Matty Berniers who wasn't there, or a couple of the other guys like Thomas Bordelot who played at Michigan already. But some of these guys, he just, because they were playing either at the program or in high school or wherever they were last year, he's just hasn't really seen them play very much. So anyway, so they have two teams, and yeah, Luke started out the week next to Jake Sanderson on the top pairing for the one team. And then over the course of the week, like every day, basically, we would get an email from the PR guy saying, "Here's the trades for the U.S. today." Like they were just shuffling guys around all week because they want to see guys play with different guys and in different roles. So like, yeah, I think he played 5 games, and I think 4 of them basically he was on the what you would call the top pairing. And then he had one other game where he was like down the lineup. But honestly, like they either every game there was either 7 or 8 defensemen, and it wasn't like the 7th or 8th guy was not playing. They were basically just rotating everybody. So he was playing a lot one way or another. I mean, I would say, the one thing for sure, like that stuck out is that he's pretty raw compared to like, even compared to where Jack was when the Devils drafted him, or where Ty Smith was, in his, they drafted him and he came to training camp and he kind of wowed everybody. It was like, holy crap, this kid's 18 years old. How is he this like poised and just good with the puck and all that stuff? Like Luke himself has he called himself a late bloomer, right? Like whatever it was, 2 days before the draft. He was, like 5'4" or 5'5", like just a couple of years ago, really. Like he was, like his brothers have joked about how he was, obviously it's like a big thing now that he's the tallest one of the bunch, and he's like kind of towers over them a little bit, but he wasn't that when they were younger. He was always the smallest one. So he's got like a new body basically over the last, let's say 2 years, and he's still trying to figure out how it all works. But like that said, like, just the raw tools are just, I don't know, like you go and watch this tournament for, like I said, it's 2 games a day for a week basically. And there's all these kids there that are, 2nd round picks and 3rd round picks. And there's a couple of kids there that are going to go really, really high in 22. And even, I think there was 1 or 2 of the 23 kids that are going to be, top 5 guys or whatever. But like, he still stood out. Like he didn't make like a bunch of razzle dazzle plays. Like I guess I was talking to Corey Proman about like, what did Quinn look like at this tournament when he was, just after he'd just been drafted, and he said he was, shaking and baking guys and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Luke didn't really do a whole lot of that, but just the way that just how well he skates is just, everybody that I talked to about him before the draft, and then even, right after they drafted him, everyone just says like, oh, just watch a couple of shifts and you'll see it. And it's true. He just gets from one point to the other on the ice, and it's in a way that looks different than a lot of the other kids that were playing in that tournament. And there were other things too. Like I think he, like, even for being like kind of a tall, skinny kid, he's compared to those other kids that he was playing against, he's pretty strong on his skates. Like those guys were, trying to hit him and trying to knock him off the puck. And I think the fact that his last name is what it is, he's gonna see a lot of, he's gonna kind of be a target next year at Michigan for some people. And sorry, he handled all that pretty well. He didn't, he was not getting pushed around. He was not getting like knocked off the puck or getting pushed around in front of the net. He did pretty well with all that. And he's also pretty good at just sort of being poised, and whenever somebody's trying to, attack him and he's like behind his net and he's just trying to get the thing out of danger, he's not just going to, slap it off the glass and get it out of there. He actually can make plays that way. And I think he's probably, we have no idea what he's going to be. That's the thing, is like, he was pretty much the youngest guy there, I think. Of the people who had been drafted. He's one of the youngest guys in his draft class. And so like, it's like this coming year is almost like, Owen Power and Matty Berniers and Ken Johnson, those guys all had a full year at Michigan already, but they're in his draft class. So it's almost like, you have to wait and see what he looks like after his freshman year to compare them to where they are today. But I do think that, like, there's like the potential for even more than maybe what some of the draft people were saying he could be. I think they were trying to be a little bit conservative just based on what he's been so far. And he's definitely the guy out of that whole bunch that could just turn into something like whatever the highest of the ceiling, where if he maxes out everything is higher than all of those guys. It's just no one's really sure because he's so young and he's so raw at this point. We just don't know what he's going to be when he's 21 or 22.
Yeah, but I'm really excited that he is going to this Michigan squad. He doesn't have to play first line because Owen Power is going to be there, like you said. There's a couple other really good players there. He could kind of just ease in, settle in, get used to college hockey, develop, and then maybe the year after next he'll be on that top line. And I'm excited for you to make a couple trips over to Ann Arbor. We know how much you like to travel and kind of, take a closer look at prospects and their elements. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But speaking of the pieces that you're doing, we peddle the Athletic every time you're on because of your specific reporting. It's just it's outside the box. It's interesting, and this is coming from somebody who writes about the team every day. I'm like, darn, Corey gets to kind of do all these cool things, and I'm sitting here being like, well, which free agents should we go after? But you're doing a great job. Are you working on something right now? Is something coming up this week?
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, no, I'm just trying to figure out if I think it's going to run this week. I think the next thing will probably be just sort of a story looking at Hamilton on the power play, like basically looking back at all the stuff that he did in Carolina and maybe even a little bit in Calgary too, just to see, like, I mean, obviously that's like if you even if the Devils didn't add any new players this year, if they just ran back the exact same rosters last year, if you just said the power play is going to finish 12th in the league instead of whatever it was, it could have been at one point it could have been 35th. Like it was just it wasn't even just that it wasn't scoring enough. It was just killing them. You could just it was one of those. I don't necessarily always like to buy into the whole like the momentum in hockey games or momentum over or whatever or any of those and some of those intangible things. But man, if anybody ever needed to know what a bad power play can do to like just the general morale to a young team, just go back and watch some of that season from last year. So there's definitely at least one more story on Dougie and sort of what his impact might be. And then there's going to be some prospect stuff. Like maybe some actual, like, here's some, I don't necessarily do rankings, but like, here's some tiers where all the guys are right now. And then, I mean, eventually we're not very far off from all the season preview stuff. So that's it's basically a few more things on maybe something on Ryan Graves or something on one of the other draft picks, but pretty soon it's going to be different too. I feel like this year already, like just from talking with my editor and a couple of the other writers on our staff, like, this, I've already said, like, I don't think people's expectations should get out of control. Like, I don't think anybody should be like, oh my God, they're definitely making the playoffs this year. They're going to make the second round, whatever. Like, but at the same time, there are going to be expectations this year and internal ones. So, I mean, they've made it very clear that they're going to expect more of themselves. So, the way you cover the team changes a little bit, I think, whenever that's the case. Like, you maybe, if somebody goes 9 games without a goal and is not really making much of an impact, that matters more in this scenario than maybe it has the past couple of years. So that'll be, there might be a little more focus on what's actually happening on the ice as opposed to some of those things that you're talking about that I like to write about. So, but we'll see.
And make sure you go to The Athletic, subscribe to The Athletic. They have another special that I heard from the podcast. I believe it's $4 or $4.99 per month. There's always a special for new subscribers. You got to just at least check it out. There's so much on there. I was reading Sean McIndoe's piece earlier today about the fan survey that he did, and he got a little overzealous, and he had to go through 800 entries of his little fan survey that he did, so that's a fun little piece that's out. and Dom always does some fun things with numbers. So John Lucian. But Corey, I'm really excited. Hopefully, on top of all that, you got to throw in a little breaking news stuff on the top 6 forward. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Corey Masisak of The Athletic, thanks so much for coming on and spending some time with us tonight.
Yeah, guys, anytime, as always. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Corey. That is Corey Masisak of The Athletic. You can find him on Twitter at CMasisak22. Subscribe to The Athletic. Trust me, I'm a big guy. I spend more money at Duncan, who supports the NWHL, by the way, than 1 month's subscription to The Athletic. Trust me on that. It's worth
Sam,
it.
Do you know how much I like The Athletic? Do you know how much I like The Athletic?
How much?
The special I had for the truncated price has ended, and I'm still paying for The Athletic.
Well, good for you.
Yeah,
Good for
yeah.
you.
I mean, it's and you know what the price is when it's not the special price. It's $8. It's $8.
I still spend more
it's
at
still
Duncan.
more for Duncan. I could get 3 months of The Athletic for one Wawa trip. That's not even beer. That's just a sandwich. And
I mean, that's a
premium.
That's a premium Taylor ham Jersey burger at Taj Lounge 973. I don't know if that's on the menu.
I'm gonna need this burger once this this little surge that we're having down in Florida ends, and everybody can be safe. And we'll come up and have
October
one of them burgers. One of them burgers. Well, we'll see about that for me.
Let's cross our fingers because in all seriousness, and again, I don't want to get into like specifics, but hey, if the show must go on, so if there's restrictions, we're gonna play it safe. We'll do it virtually.
Yeah, we'll make it work.
On October 15th. But we're gonna have our own virtual fan fest.
Yeah, but I'm treating Florida like Biodome, and I'm not getting out of here. We're just gonna try to hold the whole thing in here. But anyway, no, that was a great interview, Corey. He gave us a ton of time, and I really appreciate that for Corey because he's a really busy guy. So for him to basically carve out,
I know why
a lot of his
I know why he gave us time. It's all in the intro. Because I hit the mark on the normally I fumble the intro, but this one I had it. I was on fire, and he even remarked it. It made me happy. You have no idea.
But I will say, Sam, and we're running out of time here, but Bryce Chevalier, we had him as a guest earlier this year.
Yeah.
He predicts we're going to make the playoffs as the 3 seed.
What?
The 3 seed. I'm gonna ask him. I'm gonna see if I can get him on next week because I want to know what this is all about. I want to see how he comes up with this number. He has Tampa, Florida, Toronto, and Boston. Pretty right. That's probably how it's gonna end up in the Atlantic. Well, he's got Washington, Pittsburgh, New Jersey, and then the Rangers. The Rangers getting that 4 seed, but we don't care about them. Screw the Rangers. But that he's got New York Islanders taking a step back. He's got the Flyers kind of sticking to where they are. He's got the Hurricanes taking a precipitous step back. Columbus seems I can't see Columbus making a run this year like they have. I've doubted Columbus before, and they've proven me wrong, but I don't know what you got on that roster besides, possibly a rejuvenated Jacob Voracek. And then, obviously you have Zach Werenski there as the top line defenseman. But Merzlingus, sure, hopefully he can continue. But, I think that Columbus has to.
Columbus has a lot. I mean, what happened to their goaltender, obviously, is tragic.
Yeah.
I think they may be a sleeper team just because, on paper. And I'm only saying this on pure gut instinct of mine. On paper, they may not look good, but they have a lot to prove, and and they're playing with a heavy heart right now. So, and I think that whole season is going to be something else, and that's my prediction. But I believe, like on paper, they're not very good. I think, John Davidson, he's back in the mix, right? With them, with Columbus. Did he go back?
Yeah,
He got
he did.
fired by the Rangers, right?
Yeah,
Essentially.
I was trying to remember it.
Yeah. So let's see how that. And obviously Tortorella is with ESPN. Thank you, Michael. Hey, thank you for that. All right, so should we just tell our listeners and viewers to set your alerts for tomorrow, and if there's a podcast tomorrow, it's going to be a good one?
Yeah, hopefully. I don't know what to promise anymore. I just throw it at the wall. If we're on, we're on, and you should definitely listen to it if we're on, and if we're not on, we'll get it next time.
Yeah, him or her.
But
I never know.
Yeah,
who
they are
get.
coming. They are coming. But I do want to promote tomorrow. I do have that 5 players, that piece that's coming on. 5 players not named Vladimir Tarasenko that the Devils could target, and a trade. So this isn't Thomas Tatar. Some interesting names in the list. Some players I like. So you should definitely go on and check that out tomorrow. And then later this week, I'm going to have a piece on PK. Really, I've been trying to wrap my head around the PK Subban situation, and I've failed. So that means it's intriguing. And I'm going to sit down. And I'm just going to really take my time with this PK Subban piece to see where he fits on this roster. And then I got a couple other pieces, just kind of seeing. I have 5 prospects that could surprisingly make the team, and a couple other things in the woodwork. I will say, Sam, sometimes love hurts. I had a working list of about 40 article ideas, and it was sitting in my cookies on my Google Chrome. And my wife was trying to buy us airline tickets and trying to save us money, bless her heart. But she erased my entire list. So. So we're going to be starting from scratch on that. And we're going to be saving it in the Google Drive this time because Nick learned a lesson.
Oh, yeah.
So
we all
what are you
learn
gonna do?
lessons.
I couldn't even be mad because, it's fine. But I do want to thank Corey. That was a great interview. Great insight. Love that he was texting people at 12:01. Love to hear that, and that the deal wasn't done. It did take until 5 or 6 o'clock to get all the ins and outs worked out, and kind of get the insight on that and what he was hearing. And yeah, I really appreciate him coming on. And Sam, along for the ride. I didn't give you much leeway today, but thanks for producing and giving your insight.
That we're not like crash and burning like we did with Chico the other day.
Yeah, let's just but again, we got some good pieces, so we can cut it together and turn it into a great drive home podcast.
Oh, of course.
Make sure you're downloading us on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify. Where else are we? Google Podcasts. iHeart
Podcasts,
give
Audible,
us them 5 stars so we get ranked.
Amazon
give them 5
Music
stars,
Prime.
guys.
Yeah,
and turn on them automatic downloads.
There's some bozo on Apple Podcasts. There's like they're just giving us 1 star and making fun of me. Not cool. I mean, there are podcasts out there that I hate, and I give them 5 stars anyway because it's just a podcast community thing. Support your local podcast. But geez, I want to get to before we go. I want to get to Facebook Live because Omar Ba and Ramona Rice says, "What time for tomorrow?" I don't know.
I mean, it would be
8 p.m. Eastern.
8 is the previously discussed time, but we.
Yeah, and also on a side note, Nick, you may not know this, but I've actually been working on some not home run guests. Grand Slam guests.
Ooh.
It's not easy, folks, especially during the off season where, the Let's Go Devils podcast, it's like almost like we're on daily all the time, 24/7, 365. It seems like it, but yeah, I'm working on some Grand Slam guests that you would be like, wow, Nick, Scotty, Shorts Guy, Beer Baron, Sam, even Vinny. I can't believe these guys. They pulled it off.
Oh.
I've been working it.
Okay.
I'm working it.
Okay.
You don't even know who these people. You don't even know who these people are. I didn't even tell you.
I mean, I hope
It's
I know
the truth.
who they are. I know of their existence, but
Oh yeah, you would reckon. I mean, it's Devils related, right? So who else could it be? I've been working on some really top flight guests where you're just like, wow, they came on to your podcast. They came on to our podcast. Yeah. If that's a tease, you know. Now the name speculation: Grant Marshall, Mikey McLeod, Bruce Driver, Dougie Hamilton, Patrick Elias.
It's a lot.
You know who I want to get
There's
on?
a lot of names.
You know who I want to get? I want to get on. Remember, there was an old prospect. I think he may have played 1 or 2 games with the Devils. Usually, he was a preseason favorite of mine. The guy named Ed Ward. His name is Ed Ward. Yeah, like who names their kid Ed Ward?
I really want to get JP Damphouse on because he's the guy that the Devils drafted when Brodeur was here. It's like, how did you? I want to know, how does that feel? Like to know that,
or even Mike Dunham. You know, Mike Dunham.
Yeah, Mike Dunham would be fun. And I have a funny story about Mike Dunham because I went to a game when I was a kid, my first ever Devils game. Excited to see Marty, and Dunham was in the net. The Devils couldn't score. He had a really good game. I think it was against the Islanders, and he only gave up 1 goal, but the Devils lost in overtime. I think it was, but it was And I remember using my dad's binoculars because that's how you went to games back in the day. You didn't bring your cell phone; you brought binoculars. And I remember I would follow Valerie Zella-Pukin the whole time. So weird stories, but that's how things work. But that's all I got, Sam. We've reached the Valerie Zella-Pukin era of the show, and I think that's where we need to hit the stop sign.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So let me cue up the music. Because it's been a great podcast. Oh, jeez. I'm just all sloppy right now. Give me 1 sec. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, you hear it? Now, Vinny Parisi he loves the Woo Report. You know he's a big fan of the Woo Report. I'm a big fan of Vinny Parisi on pucksandpitchforks.com. If you haven't gone there, he's like the workhorse of the whole fan-sided family. But Vinny Parisi and I are doing another Woo Report. New time Eastern. He just confirmed. But that wasn't the Grand Slam.
That's not the surprise.
Guest.
That's not the Grand Slam guest. That's not the tomorrow 8 p.m. guest. That's not.
No.
But we love
Definitely
it. We love some Vinny.
Vinny is on another stratosphere. He's on another planet than the home run Grand Slam guests that we potentially have lined up. So look out for that.
You can talk about a major trade for a forward tomorrow. Hopefully.
Oh, can you imagine if that breaks at like 11:45 a.m. Eastern, 10:45 a.m. Central Time? Out of respect to Vinny, I'll say that. And we're breaking it, and this is what we're like. What? We got Tarasenko? Are you kidding me? After all, yes, Erica. Yeah, I would love to get Erica Wachter on. She could be one of those Grand Slam guests. She's a walk-off.
We had her
Grand
on.
Slam guest.
Yeah.
She's a walk-off Grand Slam guest.
Let's make these things happen. We'll work on it, Sam. But that's all I got. I promoted Pucks and Pitchforks. You can check out some of my stuff on Puck Pros too. I got a best trades of all time piece on there. Got a worst trades of all time piece coming soon. So it's all there.
Go to pucksandpitchforks.com. Till next time, let's go Devils.